Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee are some of the most unique titles in the Pokemon franchise. These are remakes of Generation 1. It is the second time that we've seen a Gen 1 remake in the Pokemon franchise. But Pokemon Let's Go is quite a bit different. This game was designed as a tie-in to the smash hit sensation Pokemon Go mobile game, where you could transfer your Pokemon from the app into this game and use them on an actual Nintendo Switch title. The way that you catch Pokemon in these games is also similar to Pokemon Go, where you are throwing a Pokeball using motion controls rather than the conventional system of bringing their health low and throwing a Pokeball from your inventory with an RPG system. The Pokemon Let's Go games do have turn-based battles, but these turn-based battles are much simpler, and it's very clear that these games were intended for a much more casual audience. I gotta be honest and say I was never fond of these games, the cutesy art style and rehashing Gen 1 yet again, as well as the dumbed-down battle system, but of course I'm not the intended audience for this, and this was intended to bring all the Gen 1 iconography to a new generation of children. For many, this was also a trip down memory lane to relive those Generation 1 Pokemon games with updated graphics and some new features to spice things up. I very rarely bring up these games in my videos because I mostly focus on competitive Pokemon singles, and even though Pokemon Let's Go did have a competitive singles format, it was not very popular and was quite short-lived. It technically does still exist. There is a small community for Pokemon Let's Go, but the Pokemon Showdown ladder for this game was taken down quite a while ago, and it is rather sparse in terms of interest. And it almost feels unfair to punch down on this game that wasn't intended to be a competitive title at all. But it is interesting to look at it from a competitive angle, because people did try to play it competitively, and there is a metagame that formed within it, despite its very bare-bones mechanics and strange blend of the Gen 1 roster and some modern concepts from later Pokemon games, but not all of them. It's a pretty strange format to look back on. I do think that this is probably the worst OU format for a mainline Pokemon title. It almost doesn't even count, which is why I don't usually bring it up in my video. But today, let's talk about this format and what does make it unique, the few things that do make it unique and may be worth checking out. So right off the bat, in Pokemon Let's Go, much like in Generation 1, there are no abilities, passive abilities like, intimidate, static, whatever. Those don't exist. There are also no held items in the game at all. You also have no EVs. Instead, there is a system called AVs, which stands for Awakening Values, apparently, and this allows you to max out every stat up to 200 AVs in each. However, in multiplayer battles, this is disabled. This is just for single player, I think. So basically, everything just has its base stats. There's no specializing in certain stats. So right off the bat, you can see that Pokemon Let's Go has significantly less team building depth, with no items or abilities, or even the ability to customize stats with EVs. There are just natures as the only way to alter your stats whatsoever. So that's quite interesting, isn't it? Very stripped back mechanically. But the thing is that a lot of modern moves exist in Pokemon Let's Go, like Roost and U-Turn and all of these moves that never existed in Gen 1. It also operates mostly on modern mechanics. You have physical special split, the fairy type exists, moves mostly exist in their modern states rather than their older states, like Blizzard doesn't work how it did in Gen 1, Hyper Beam, etc. So it's basically like playing modern Pokemon, like Gen 7 Pokemon, but without held items or abilities or EVs to significantly strip back the amount of depth possible. To make things even stranger, Mega Evolutions are here. All the Mega Evolutions for Generation 1 Pokemon can be used. However, they don't have an ability either. It's a bit of a weird mishmash of mechanics, isn't it? The Pokédex is also restricted to just Gen 1 Pokemon. The only exceptions are the Alolan forms of Gen 1 Pokemon like Dugtrio and Exeggutor Alola, and also Melmetal specifically, because Melmetal is a Pokemon Go Pokemon, and you can transfer Melmetal from Pokemon Go into Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu or Eevee. Also, Melmetal is by far the best Pokemon in the game. I think every single Pokemon Let's Go team I've ever seen has a Melmetal on it. I mean, with Double Iron Bash and its incredible stats, it's easy to see why. This is a staple of Gen 8 OU as well, and compared to all these Gen 1 bozos, Melmetal is feeling like it shouldn't be here. It feels kind of out of place, but it's a defining Pokemon of the Let's Go metagame. Kind of makes it feel less like Gen 1 when every team has a Melmetal on it. It's so central, but yeah, that's the case. And here's what I find very bizarre about Pokemon Let's Go. Pokemon Let's Go has Stealth Rock in it. That's pretty different from Gen 1, isn't it? Entry Hazard exists here, But interestingly, you search for spikes and nothing gets spikes. And you know what's more? Nothing gets rapid spin. At least is there defog? No, there's no defog. So for some reason, Stealth Rock is in the game, Spikes isn't, okay. And there's no hazard removal at all, and obviously nothing can equip heavy duty boots. I don't even think they existed at this time. This was pre-Gen 8. But what a bizarre choice. So we allowed Stealth Rock, but there is no form of hazard removal in the entire game. It's a little... Is there Magic Coat? Maybe that is like the one... No? Not even Magic Coat? I mean, how weird is that? So you just have to deal with Stealth Rock, and there's no way to get rid of it. It's quite a thing. And it feels like in many instances, this game just has the worst of all worlds, because there's like no items, no abilities, and they have... The one thing they chose to include was Scald. If anything, you could have cut Scald and maybe Stealth Rock, but it's just a bizarre choice of things they decided to include, isn't it? So we've got to worry about Scald burns. There's no abilities that grant status immunity whatsoever. Small amount of counterplay there was to Scald is now even less, and we have Stealth Rock as the only hazard in existence and no hazard removal whatsoever. One of the most famous things about these games, about Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, is that they created these specific game-exclusive broken versions of both Pikachu and Eevee. These have higher stats than their base forms, most notably a significant speed increase, and they also have a bunch of really broken exclusive moves that only they get. We've got one of my favorite moves of all time, Pika Pow on Pikachu starter, which has up to 102 power with maximum happiness. Very interesting move. We also have Zippy Zap, which is a priority physical attack that Pikachu has with 50 power. It also always crits. What a move this is. We have, of course, Splishy Splash, which is a 90 power water type special attack with a 30% paralysis chance. I mean, that's a damn good attack. It's like the body slam effect on a high power water move. We have also Floaty Fall. Floaty Fall, but these move names are horrible. They have created Floaty Fall, which has 90 power, is a physical flying type attack with a 30% flinch chance on it. Another outstanding move on Pikachu starter. I believe that's all of them. I believe that's it. So your moveset will probably consist of, you know, Zippy Zap, Floaty Fall, Splishy Splash, and Pika Pow for maximum damage. One of the most iconic movesets in history. Unfortunately, this Pikachu starter is ranked UU. I don't think it's very good compared to actual OU Pokemon, despite the main character syndrome of making Pikachu specifically way more powerful with a series of broken attacks. What about Eevee, though? Eevee also got some main character treatment. Yet another icon of the series. And they gave you an incentive to not evolve this guy and keep it as its base form, because Eevee starter gets such attacks as Sizzly Slide. Wait a sec, does Pikachu also get this? No. How come Eevee's moves are so much better than Pikachu's? Eevee has crazy attacks. Take a look at Sizzly Slide. 90 power fire type physical move with 100% chance to burn. That's insane. That's a crazy attack. That's better than Sacred Fire, which was already incredible. We also have Bouncy Bubble, which is a 90 power water type special attack with a healing effect associated, recovers 50% of damage dealt. I don't think we've seen a water type move with a draining effect like this elsewhere in the franchise. That's pretty insane. There's also Buzzy Buzz. What are we doing here? Buzzy Buzz has 90 power at 100% paralysis chance. Why are these so much better than Pikachu's? Pikachu had a measly 30% chance on his attacks. They were good, but this is much better. Freezy Frost is another one. 90 power special attack. Ice type move with the effect of eliminating all stat changes. So it's basically Ice Beam, but you get rid of all their boosts. Also pretty crazy. And this right here is the greatest Pokemon name in the whole series. This is where they peaked as a franchise, I'm afraid. I don't think that it'll ever get better than this. Baddie Bad. Baddie Bad is a 90 power dark type attack that summons Reflect on the field. It's an unbelievable. Just words cannot express the brilliance of this one. It's through the roof. I almost forgot Glitzy Glow, a significantly less good name when compared to Baddie Bad, which is... It's not really a fair comparison. I'm pretty sure they resurrected Ernest Hemingway himself from the grave just to name a Pokemon move. They got the power to do that. And then Ernest said, look, I only have 2 words left in the tank, and then I'm back in the ground. And they said, okay, Ernest, give us your best. And then he came up with Baddie Bad right there and then. So it's not really fair to compare Baddie Bad to Glitzy Glow in that sense, but these are mirrored effects. So this one summons Light Screen. It's a 90 power psychic type. special attack, which is a very strong attack to create a screen whilst attacking. I think the sheer power of these attacks seems to give Eevee starter version a viable niche in OU. If you look at the viability rankings, it's ranked in the C tier alongside Omastar and Chansey. And Eevee starter is ranked above such fellows as Alakazam, Primeape, Rapidash, Machamp, actual fully evolved Pokemon. So that's pretty impressive. Eevee starter is quite a bit better than Pikachu starter. What's interesting about Pokemon Let's Go is that Mega Blastoise is actually one of the best offensive Pokemon in the game. And it's the best Mega of the Cantonian starter trio. This is unique because in Gen 6 and 7, the opposite is true. Mega Blastoise is the worst of its Mega starter trio. In those games, Mega Blastoise is quite underwhelming with its fairly unexciting ability, and, Mega Venusaur, on the other hand, has thick fat and great bulk, and the Mega Charizards have powerful abilities as well, and more immediate offensive output. But in this world where Megas do not have abilities, Mega Blastoise, being just a mono water type with a really good move pool and great stats as well, is much better here, and its advantages are enhanced because all of its competitors don't have their abilities. Blastoise seems to benefit from this instead of being hindered from it, relative to anyone else anyway. This set of coverage right here is actually really good for the metagame. I mean, Hydro Pump, Ice Beam is abused by various water-type special attackers. Dark Pulse is really nice because of how central Mew is. And Aqua Jet is also very good just to finish things off. Another thing that makes Mega Blastoise good compared to the Mega Charizards in particular is that it is not that threatened by Stealth Rock. Like I mentioned, Stealth Rock exists in this format and it can't be removed. That's devastating for any flying type, and especially devastating for the Mega Charizards, who can't even run a Rapid Spin or Defogger for support. Mega Blastoise, having a mono water typing, feels even better here in that sense. So that's pretty interesting, isn't it? Another Pokemon that's feeling way better in this metagame is Mega Beedrill. Mega Beedrill is, of course, an incredibly min-maxed version of Beedrill with massive attack and speed and terrible stats everywhere else, a real glass cannon. The problem with Mega Beedrill in Gens 6 and 7 is that it sucks into a lot of common defensive Pokemon, especially Landorus Therian, who comes in and intimidates you and then shuts down your damage output significantly. There's also like Skarmory and various bulky steel types like Celesteela in Gen 7 that just very easily wall you. So you are very fast and threatening to a lot of things, but so many common Pokemon just shut you down. But remember, in Pokemon Let's Go, this is just the Gen 1 Pokédex. Beedrill is way more threatening to more Pokemon here. Also, it's not worried about getting intimidated. There's no abilities. It's not worried about Skarmory. The guy doesn't exist. It's not worried about Rocky Helmet because held items don't exist. Rocky Helmet is a big punish to Mega Beedrill as it makes contact with all of its moves and just gets destroyed by Rocky Helmet and Rough Skin and the Iron Barbs from Ferrothorn. And there's a lot out to get Mega Beedrill in Gen 6 and 7. And a lot of that stuff is taken away in Pokemon Let's Go, allowing this Pokemon to finally be a pretty great physical attacker. It is still, struggling a little bit against like Melmetal and the fact that rocks can't be removed, but it gains way more from all these mechanical shifts than it loses overall. If you happen to be a Mega Beedrill head, maybe you'd like Pokemon Let's Go, maybe you'd be fond of this. Mega Aerodactyl is the best Mega Evolution in the game for similar reasons to Mega Beedrill, where a lot of its counterplay has been removed. It's just the Gen 1 Pokédex, and this is a straightforwardly good, fast, and threatening physical attacker with great coverage, extremely similar to Mega Beedrill, but Mega Aerodactyl is a little bit better with better physical moves at its disposal, mostly being the main advantage. I should probably bring up Mew here just because it is so central and important to talk about. Not only does every team have Melmetal, pretty much every team has Mew. Those are the top two by far. Mew and Melmetal really dominate things. Mew, of course, has the same absurdly vast move pool that it has in every other gen that it's famous for, but it feels even more enhanced here. When things are so restricted, Mew is not as restricted as everything else. It's got Stealth Rock and Healing, and every special attack on the planet, Scald, Ice Beam, Flamethrower, Thunderbolt. It also has Pivoting. Mew has moveset variety, tech different coverage for different matchups, etc. It's pretty obvious why it's so powerful. It also has like Will-O-Wisp to apply status. Another mechanic that didn't exist in Gen 1 but exists here. It's especially good because there's no counterplay to status in the form of abilities or Lumberry or things like that, so that's something to consider. Mew is obviously amazing and auto-include on just about every team. I was surprised to see that Dugtrio Alola was such a high-rated top-tier Pokemon in Pokemon Let's Go OU, but it makes sense when you think about it because besides Melmetal, this is the only other half-decent Steel type And compared to everything else, its stats are pretty good. It's got high speed and attack and a very good typing relative to other stuff. Very good move pool too. It's kind of serving the purpose of like an Excadrill maybe. Sucker Punch is also useful for a form of priority. It's interesting to see what is so good in a world where everything is so stripped back mechanically. I guess just the typing alone, the lack of many better steel types, and just good enough stats and a good enough move pool make this a high tier Pokemon. It's a bit weird to see. Dugtrio Alola is terrible in every other game it's in, but right here it's an OU ranked Pokemon, and in fact it's A tier. You of course have Alolan Muck in here. You've got Gen 1 regional forms, and Alolan Muck is one of them, the absolute goat of all of them, and this one is a higher ranked Pokemon. Poison Dark being an excellent typing here. Crucially, you are immune to Psychic, and you've got Dark Stab to threaten Mew, so that is very valuable. Interestingly, Pokemon Let's Go does not have the move Pursuit in it. This is the first time they removed Pursuit from the game, and they would say that was a great idea, let's do that in Gen 8 as well. That's where they got the idea. Also something I noticed just now, Mega Drain, for some reason, is just Giga Drain. In Pokemon Let's Go, they changed it. Does Giga Drain even exist? I guess not, but it's Mega Drain. In the main games, Mega Drain is a much weaker draining move, but Giga Drain has 75 power, but they've simply renamed it. Interesting choice. But Alolan Muck is quite good just for its typing. It's a very good typing with only one weakness to ground and good mixed coverage and toxic to threaten various things. I suppose it's like a weird little mixed attacker with typing that grants significant defensive value. Another significant moveset cut in Pokemon Let's Go that changes the identity of quite a few Pokemon is the lack of Dragon Dance. Dragonite is here. It's actually ranked UU, regrettably, but if you use Dragonite, you're not running Dragon Dance on it. You're running Agility and taking advantage of its attacking move pool with Agility to sweep. It's a rather different way to use Dragonite. It almost feels like a Gen 1 OU set, but slightly different. There's no Gen 1 wrap here for the old Dragonite gaming. And Mega Gyarados, in a similar vein, is just a physical attacker with Dragon Tail. It just runs coverage and stab and just attacks you. It's a bit weird to see this. It's Mega Gyarados and it's not even Dragon Dancing. It's kind of strange. Maybe some people like that though. The lack of Dragon Dance means there's no snowbally sweepers, at least not in the same way. There are some boosting moves like, I believe, Calm Mind does exist and Swords Dance does exist. Mew doesn't get it though, but Dodrio gets Swords Dance, and Dodrio is a chief abuser of such a concept. But there's no Dragon Dance. Speaking of Dodrio, I did find a team on the forums by the player Ineros that is built around Dodrio. And I didn't notice this until now. Swords Dance is in the game, but it is incredibly scarce. As you can see, no OU ranked Pokemon gets Swords Dance. So the Swords Dance options are such Pokemon as Pinsir, Victory Bell, Kabutops. And if you take a look at this, Dodrio is the fastest. Dodrio has pretty good attack, and Dodrio actually has a solid move pool. It's got Jump Kick. This significantly threatens Metal, Drill Peck for that Flying Stab, and Headbutt for normal stab with a flinch chance on it. Is Dodrio the best physical sweeper in the game? I think that this is clear evidence that that's the case. I don't see a single counter argument to be found. Maybe this format is epic after all. It would seem that there is a semi-active tournament scene for Let's Go Pikachu Eevee. As recently as last year in October, there was this tournament right here, Let's Go Premier League, which is actually a team tournament with multiple formats for Let's Go, including UU and RU. I didn't even realize these existed, but people are playing them as recently as late last year. That's fun. Why don't we look at a recent tournament game for Let's Go to get a sense of the current metagame and how it's played. This is between Mimikyu Stardust and LPZ for finals of Let's Go Premier League. Mimikyu Stardust I'm aware of from Gen 9 OU, still playing Let's Go. That's fun. We'll get the Mew and the Melmetal lead. By the way, both teams do have Mew and Melmetal. These are the two dominant factors here. We're getting Stealth Rocks on the field that will never be removed. I guess that's just a handshake that happens in this format. You accept that rocks are going to be up and there's nothing you can do about it. Fairy type Clefable is here. It doesn't have Magic Guard, which is kind of interesting to see. It's been finished off by a Starmie. And in comes the enemy Mew. A Nasty Plot is a boosting move that exists. Mew really has it all. I mean, seriously. LPZ seems to be hoping for a full paralysis there. The odds are in your favor. A full power or a crit would have done it for you. Here's Mega Beedrill inviting in the Melmetal, who takes peanuts from that, but you can, of course, U-turn out now. Sacrifice Mew. It might be a little bit rough to get through that enemy Melmetal, don't you think? These rocks are suffocating. You can't even get rid of them. It's crazy. Rocks that you can't get rid of. It's such an idea, isn't it? Okay, this is clearly the Mega of the team. Mega Venusaur is in. It's almost like a Gen 2 Snorlax situation where both players have this Melmetal and you got to use it the best. You got to use it better than your opponent. Sleeping the Melmetal there seems like a devastating blow. There's also no hidden power here, I forgot to mention. Hidden power is not a mechanic, so I don't think Zapdos actually has any way to hit Rhydon. There's some echoes of Gen 1 right there. And a Rhydon behind a sub is sort of a menace to society, isn't it? Especially when you get a crit on Mega Venusaur. That's certainly powerful. Mimikyu is going to go to Electrode, which is seems like a pretty novel choice. From my memory on the VR, this was low ranked. It's a UU Pokemon, I think, it was like C or something, or even below that. It's not going to do much. It's going to fall to a couple Psychics from Mew, the other big queen piece of Pokemon Let's Go. Mega Beedrill is doing all right. Tried to poison jab the Zap, but a Melmetal came in on the predict. Good move there. Genius work. And Melmetal is so good, folks. Jeez, the Earthquake on the incoming Rhydon as well. LPZ's playing this quite well, I gotta give credit. You're doing good work. But that was a genius level move, catching the Roost as Zapdos lands on the floor when it clicks Roost. You lose your flying typing. That might have just brought you back, Mimikyu Stardust. You might have just been brought back into the conversation with that one. Dugtrio Alola is expecting or hoping for a Hydro Pump miss there, but that does not come. The sleeping Melmetal is rough. This Mew can just nasty plot in your face. You're going to have to wake up and Thunder Wave it. That's exactly what happens. And I think Mimikyu Stardust is going to wait. That's crazy that Mew is still faster. I didn't expect that, to be honest, but a full paralysis has bailed you out. Mew is still faster because, of course, in Pokemon Let's Go, they're using Gen 7 power mechanics, and it only restricts your speed by 50% instead of the old Gen 75% speed restriction. So Melmetal is that slow that even a paralyzed Mew is still faster. That caught me off guard a little bit, but nicely gamed from both. That was a pretty fun game, but you can see this format is definitely very bare bones. I mean, even when I played it a little bit when it was on the ladder, and that was a long time ago at this point, I don't think it was that different. There's not that many options in the metagame. There have been some developments. I believe like the rise of Mega Blastoise was a fairly recent development. There's always optimizations to be had. Even in, Gen 1 OU, there are things that people are figuring out that they never knew before. But that's what Let's Go is like. It's a weird mishmash of modern mechanics and the restricted Gen 1 Pokédex with some other limitations, like no items, no abilities. For some reason, Stealth Rock specifically is in here, but no hazard removal. It's a very strange collection of things that evidently still appeals to some people. There is a Let's Go Premier League. Mimikyu Stardust is still playing this. LPZ is still playing this. We've got a fairly active community going on. This was, a tournament last year, but I'm sure there'll be more tournaments in the future. If this metagame appeals to you, if you want to use weird starter Eevee with Baddie Bad and Sizzly Slide and all these crazy moves, if you want to use Mega Beedrill and it's actually viable, you want to use Mega Blastoise and it's actually viable, maybe Pokemon Let's Go is the format for you. A stripped back version of Pokemon, a simpler version of Pokemon. Clearly, the actual games were intended for a more casual audience, but competitive players decided to, give it a go anyway. Even though it's a small community that doesn't appeal to too many people, there is a community, and they certainly exist. Thank you for watching, folks, and I will catch you later.